turn your phones off or on silent, please. There's nothing worse than being interrupted by the phone. I also remind you that on the seats there's a form that tells you about the procedures and the protocols of this planning committee, and I please ask you to adhere to them. The other thing really is just about public speakers. There is some public speakers for the applications today. You'll be asked to either come to the table or speak at the table or speak through the microphone. You will have 3 minutes, and please keep an eye on the counter over there. Thank you. Right, without further ado, can we commence then? Membership of the committee. I know there's some substitutes here. Thank you.
Councillor Arnold, thank
you.
And March to the 16th of the July.
Was here this morning. I don't know where she is this afternoon, but she definitely should be here. Right, can we go down the table then? Interest and lobbying. Councillor Pinnett?
No, Chair.
I think we did receive a letter, didn't we? Yeah. That's okay. Right. Councillor Larchington?
I don't think I have that in my mind.
Councillor Taylor? Councillor Virginie? Thank you.
Yes, indeed, the email about 91621, please.
Thank you. Councillor Akhtar?
Yeah, page 35 and page 43.
Sorry, thank you.
Page 35.
Page 35, Chair. Councillor Hall?
2019 9188 and 2019 9162 action taken to the vote of England.
I'll make it a bit simpler by saying item 11, agenda item 12, and agenda item 13, no action taken. Okay, thank you. Commissioner of the Public then?
There's no further items.
Thank you. Deputation or petition, anyone?
No.
Public question time?
No.
Thank you. Site visits were carried out this morning as per the agenda. No items of concern raised at that. Local planning then, item 9. Local planning authority appeal, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Julia Stedman, the team leader in development management. As set out under item 9, there are 2 appeals which have been reported. Both were officer decisions and both were dismissed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Comments, anybody? Councillor Pinnett?
Yes, Chair. I don't know whether we can do anything about this, but I noticed in the first appeal that the inspector says that this will be draft, which it isn't. Now,
Sure, we can put it right.
that's annoying because it's quite clear. She knows where it is because it talks about Kirklees on the way through. But although it's not far from the border, it's still including Kirklees.
Could I ask Tyres, do you want to just mention something?
Yeah, certainly.
We asked you to write back to him.
Yeah, we'll update the planning inspector on that one to details. It doesn't change the matter, but
No. I'll give that answer.
The noting, can we note them? Okay. Thank you. Next for the planning application, agenda item 10, election of 22 dwellings and land of Oxford Road, Nick?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nicholas Hurst, case officer for the application. This application seeks to erection 22 dwellings on land allocated for housing within the local plan. The site is on the north edge of Gunsel and form a numerous boundaries to Greenbelt. Greenbelt to the immediate north and west of the site. The site being adjacent to Oxford Road to the east and the MCT2 motorway east of the north. This image is taken from the west side of the site. Topography is sloping gently slopes upwards from east to west. Land is currently undeveloped and is not used for agriculture. Only frontage approved trees which have a tree preservation order. These currently offer a screen between the site and Oxford Road. The closest building to the site is Home House Care Home, which is at Different options of access were considered to try and retain all trees, however ultimately discounted. On the planning balance, also 2D is considered acceptable, subject to the landscaping condition requiring replacement of 2 semi-mature trees following comments from members. Negotiations took place within the application regarding the layout to achieve a more natural engaging arrangement, alongside discussions on the north boundary. Officers were keen to see a soft boundary along the north to the green belt. The lower and open fencing currently resides retained. This will be followed by separation of rear garden fencing and timber, open timber top dressing. The image shows the sections through the site, and it is considered that the achieved scheme is acceptable to the impact on the green belt. Regarding site levels, officers consider that these have been appropriately taken into consideration. There's a few brief examples of housing types.
Can you just stop it? Can everybody hear the officer? We're okay with that? Sorry, it's been a bit quiet.
There are 9 housing types across the site. These offer a good mixture of size and design. This is the largest unit, a detached 5-bed dwelling. All the dwellings are 2 stories with some having rooms in the roof space. Here's an example of the 2-bed terrace units. The report from members outline officers' full assessment of the proposal. In summary, the land is allocated for housing and proposal has an acceptable density and housing mixture. Therefore, the principal development is considered acceptable. Regarding visual amenity, the layout of the site and the design of the dwellings are acceptable and have an attractive extension to the council. It is considered that the proposal would not harm the amenities of neighbourhood residents and future occupiers with a good standard of amenity. I'll now pass you over to Highways to comment.
Through you, Chair. Ranking the Highway Development Management. To summarise the highways section of the report, development is forecast to generate 17 to 19 two-way vehicle movements in the AM and BMP periods respectively. Access is taken via Oxford Road and then formed into a shared surface arrangement internally with a proposed finished gradients of 1 in 25. It is considered there is sufficient parking to serve development, including for visitors. Overall, the proposal is considered acceptable subject to conditions, including sustainable travel measure improvements in the form of bus stop upgrades and the provision of network lights.
Other issues such as coal risk, ecology and air quality have been satisfactorily addressed as outlined in the report. A full set of planning contributions have been agreed and to be secured by section 106, including 4 affordable housing units, off-site contributions to open space and open areas of play, and the aforementioned sustainable travel initiatives. Final negotiations are ongoing on the detailed design information. However, the principle of the drainage strategy has been agreed. Regarding public representations, 2 have been received. These raise concerns relating to overdevelopment, design, highways, and residential amenity. Officers are satisfied that these have been addressed within the committee report. In conclusion, officers recommend approval subject to delegation back to officers to finalise the drainage layout and secure the section 106, along with the amended conditions of the land regarding landscaping to include 2 semi-mature trees.
Mr. Flanagan, please. Mr. Flanagan, can I turn to the volume of black?
Thank you, Chair. Joe Flanagan, I'm planning for acting on behalf of Reaver Home on this site. I won't go through everything in detail and repeat what's both in your reports and described by Nick. Just sort of reiterate that we have worked in detail and at length with various departments of the council to amend the scheme from what was originally submitted to what you have it before you now. All of the council departments are in agreement with the plan as set forwards. As being said, we've still got to go to the detail of the drainage design, but the principle of what we're proposing is acceptable. So through the tandem working of myself, Reaver Homes and Kirklees Council, we've got a high quality proposal that we hope you'll approve in accordance with Nick's recommendation. We are here for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Take a seat. Members, anybody else starts? Councillor Pitt, can you indicate? No, yes, you did. You put your hand on the mic. Want to go?
Well,
Sorry, Greg.
Fine, thanks, Chair. I would like to move this in accordance with the recommendations. It's allocated in the local plan for housing. It's a fairly, what I would call, traditional site. There's a road with houses down both sides. Got a dedicated right turn. The only thing I will do is ask that, I noticed some planting on there. It has to develop to make sure that those are semi-mature trees that do mitigate the loss of the 2 TPO trees in the front there. And with those conditions, Chair, I move for approval.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second that. I think it's right to point out that this has been allocated in the plan. It's gone through the inspection process, and no substantial or indeed no modifications have been suggested by the planning inspector. So we need to certainly agree to the principle of what's here. And as it happens, I think the layout is quite acceptable. I noticed a comment about this was, I think it was from Councillor Snage, that she felt the layout didn't fit with the surroundings. Sorry, I can't think of the word. But there are quite a wide variety of layouts around that area. So it does seem to me that it is wholly acceptable within those parameters.
Yeah, well, I'm going to second it, so I won't second it, but what I will say is I know 2 sites very close to where I am that Weaver has built, and the thing that I like about Weaver is they get on with it, and they are building good quality homes. So, and another thing I recall as well about it being on a slight slope and the development, I think it's what we've got here, I think is absolutely spot on. So I will wholeheartedly support this application.
Through Chair, I did mention on the bus about the backing up the traffic just outside the entrance, proposed entrance. You mentioned about the right-hand turn. Will there be a keep clear sign where the entrance is? Because if it's a right-hand turn and there's no keep clear sign, then traffic's going to be coming. It's just on that junction.
We can add that condition to the condition as be in the form of a road map.
Yeah.
Keep clear road markings, keep clear road access in and out.
Otherwise they'll be backing from the other side. The second issue is, I see that obviously looks to be 2 spaces allocated per home. These vertical driveways, as we well know, people rarely use them. Is there any way those could be in front of the house, or one in front, one to the side, rather than one behind the other, because you know what's going to happen there? The parking is going to be, that looks like quite a narrow road through, and I can guarantee that people will be parking in front of the houses, not using the driveway. So they'll use the driveway for one car, but not for 2. And the smaller houses, we've got 3, do they only have 1 parking space each?
Through Chair, the driveway arrangement we've considered to be acceptable. The thing is, if you move the gardens to some of the frontage, that takes away the green space. So we have accepted that stacking up arrangement of parking on all developments, and it does appear to work okay in that respect. As such, we consider it to remain.
It does often water runoff.
Yeah. So just recap what you said about the second issue.
No, well, I can see actually that you have got horizontal parking spaces in front of those small houses. I thought there was only 1, but now I can see it there.
Yeah.
There's 2. It's just a shame that the parking wasn't like that in front of the other houses, rather than the vertical driveways, which most people don't use. I don't know if that's a consideration.
Through you, Chairman, we do consider parking arrangements on all developments of this, and historically we've accepted that vertical
Even in the update, it tells us about the contributions from the Metro, which is welcome. So we have got a motion and a second to this. I'm quite happy for the vote is to delegate back to offices. All those in favour of this application? Anybody against that? Application is approved. Unanimous. Thank you. And we move on to agenda item 11. Selection of a site extension single story road extension on 19th Century Kirklees Street.
The property is large enough to support both the side and rear extensions whilst retaining a reasonable living space, and the materials for the rear extension would also match the main house. The design of the parapet roof is a bit with its parapet roof and lancing is a contemporary addition. However, this is not considered to be able to character of the wider area. As noted in the report, there will be potential for an impact on the adjoining neighbour, as the rear extension would be constructed along the shared boundary. However, the extension is single storey with a limited protection of 3 metres, and furthermore, this element could actually be constructed under the permitted development. An objection has been received. A summary of the concerns raised has been included in the updates, along with officers' responses. However, I'd like to draw members' attention to one of the comments, which is that the objector is very worried that the neighbour's house will be effectively uninhabitable for months. That should actually be the objector is very worried that their own property will be effectively uninhabitable for months. And the comments were received prior to the publicity period expiring. To conclude, this application has been considered and assessed by officers and was brought to members with a recommendation of approval as outlined in the report.
Mrs. Pickering, please. Mrs. Pickering, are you okay standing up?
Yes, well, can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
You will by now have seen my detailed objections to the plans for the bungalow next door to me, which were ignored in the committee report. This pair of 2-bedroom bungalows are part of a row of small properties designed for and occupied by old people. They are very popular and changed hands without even coming on the market, so they are needed. I don't think it makes any sense to change one of these properties into a family home. The scale of the development is entirely out of keeping with the rest of the properties. It will look, in Prince Charles's famous words, like a carbuncle stuck on my small bungalow. I don't agree that it will form an appropriate relationship with the other bungalows in the row. I note too that it is proposed to allocate the front garden for parking. which will be out of keeping with our row of neat front gardens. I'm very sure about how I am supposed to cope with the noise, destruction of next door property, including the loft space being ripped apart and redeveloped. We share a party wall. Coming to the proposed extension at the rear of the property, outside my bedroom window, right on the boundary line, it is proposed to construct a blank brick wall nearly 3 metres high and extending 3 metres out from the brick wall. The report notes the potential for the formation of an overbearing and oppressive impact. As the person who will have to live next to this extension, I am saying that there will definitely be an overbearing and oppressive impact on my property. No one who sees it could doubt that. I'm 92, I don't go out much. My home is my garden, which I look after myself and have everything to me. My neighbours didn't even have the courtesy to tell me what they were planning. I'm devastated by the thought of this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Members? Anybody? We've listened to officers' arguments on this one. We can certainly sympathise with Mrs. Pickering's situation. However, we are being advised by the officers that this application complies, and I feel that someone needs to move it. If I have to move it from the chair, I'll have to move it from the chair.
Yeah, Chair, it's one of those that's a bit unbalanced, isn't it? From the front, you can still look very similar. Once you go around the back, however, the story's a bit different. So there is some extension, some things being built there. And you know, on paper, I think it's probably written to me, but when I went round the back and saw it, I actually think it's probably about right. So I'll go and look at the back officer's recommendations.
Well, I agree with everything what Graham said. I don't see it being overbearing at all or in any way, shape or form. I think, considering its size and our size of garden, I think it's rather a well-designed extension, so I have no problem in seconding this application at all. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's one of these applications that is on balance, and quite clearly the original proposal was not acceptable, and they have eventually produced a design that is acceptable to the planning authority. By that I mean the officers and members of the committee. I hear what Mrs. Pickering said so eloquently, but if only neighbours would talk to people and doing things like this, it would help. Too often we come across cases where clearly there's been no communication whatsoever, and not taking people into their confidence, if you like, and saying what they are going to do, how it would affect them, and what do you think about it, all that sort of thing. Which is a pity that hasn't happened. We can't force people to do that, but but I think on balance, it's probably all right. And bear in mind the next door neighbour's house is to the south of this property, and therefore the question of light won't really be an issue. That's right, the sun will come around the other side. And I mean, I hear what Mrs. Pickering said about the wall, but there are ways of decorating walls. but as I said at the beginning, on balance, it's approvable.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got very little sympathy with Mrs. Kirklees, but to my mind, the balance is set by the officer's consideration and recommendation. But what I would like to suggest is we get a condition about hours of work. I do take Mrs. Kirklees' point about noise during the construction. I know it's a limited use, but can we look at conditions about hours of work?
I think that's extremely hard to enforce on a private development of this nature.
Through your chair, but we can't condition the hours of construction, but we can include an advisory note which sets out suggested hours, so we can do it as an advisory
We can do
note.
that. It's not allowed condition. Councillor Denby, not actually.
Whilst I understand this is like legally sound, I do wonder if the architect is here or if anybody actually watches the webcast back, if it was a possibility to bring that wall slightly in from the right hand side, just for the sake of neighbourhood harmony. And I do think it would make a massive impact or less of an impact on Mrs. Pickering. And if that's something that maybe the architect could consider, maybe a foot or two in, I think the overbearing that wall could be improved.
I take your point, but it's like anything else. It's like a bit like what Bill just said. We've got to be reasonable, and we're asking for a change of design as far as that goes. Councillor Turner.
Just picking up on what Leanne said, it's always difficult, isn't it, when we've rejected something and then they go away and come back with a design. I would talk to officers to reject it because they've done pretty much what we've asked in effect. And so I always find that difficult to matter, and I fully understand the neighbour's concern. It's really difficult when somebody's gone away in effect, done what we asked them, and we said, well, actually, we didn't really mean that. So so that balances it for me, that they've done what we asked, they've obviously worked with officers. So I think that balances it into, as I said, moving to the right sector.
We're going to move to the vote now, but can I just explain, Mrs. Pickering, that there is other pieces of legislation as far as the party law is concerned that you can actually use, and there should be.
Yes, I understand.
There should be some agreement between you and your neighbour as to when he works on that.
I'm not against them improving the property, but I just think it's not impeded with the property as it exists. I've extended my own property.
Well, all I'm saying is it's come back and we've asked them to adjust it and amend it. We've amended it and now it's become acceptable. But we are going to go to the vote now. All those in favour of this application? Anybody against? The application's approved. Thank you. Item 12 is
The site does have a detached garage which will be removed and the proposed property would retain front and rear gardens. It's also appreciated that the materials proposed would match the main house. However, the projection at the side and rear extension would be very large in comparison to the host building, and there is not enough on site to justify the proposed formats at the S4 scale. There are no high-risk concerns with this proposal, and the impacts of the proposal in terms of the neighbouring property have been considered with the assessment, and the residential neighbours have not concerns now with visual method. An objection has been received, and a summary of the concerns have been included in the officer's report and included in the responses. Under other matters, it is noticed that the applicant has expressed concern in terms of crime prevention based on the improved scheme, which included a smaller extension and a separate outbuilding in terms of the gap. This has also been addressed in the officer report. To conclude, this application has been considered and assessed by officers and is brought to members with a recommendation for refusal for the reasons outlined in the officer report.
Mr. Hussain, please. Members?
I do agree with officer's recommendation to have the garden, and I do believe that wall would be an open mass on the other side. I think, in my view, I think you're being very generous in allowing them to extend so dramatically. And I don't think it's a massive compromise to just break that huge wall up and have a meter down. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's too much of an issue.
More than that.
I move to accept officer's recommendation.
Anybody else? Can I just raise the point that was raised this morning, which you just mentioned?
Through Chair, part of the discussion this morning was looking at the cumulative impact on the extensions. And as I discussed with you on site, policy LP24 of the local plan now It sets out that extensions should be subservient to the host building and in keeping with existing buildings in terms of, and amongst other things, the scale. So as we've set out in the report, the approval which has been granted already, as officers we feel that is a maximum to what should be agreed to on this particular site.
Within that document.
That's correct.
Right, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
I'll second this because the policy is quite clear about there being two big numbers of that policy. I do take on board though, and I have some sympathy with the applicant about the two buildings a bit further up. I don't know what the act is, the garage door was clear enough, so I do have sympathy with it. But if it's against policy, then I'm afraid we have to go with policy. But I do have some sympathy with it. I'd rather second it for some approved recommendations.
Thank you. Somebody else? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, I hear what the applicant's saying about that gap. I mean, there would be a gap there if there wasn't another building. And I see the purpose for which the building is required. I don't know how you can manage to deal with that. It does seem a rather large building for motorcycle storage, but that's maybe I'm just showing my ignorance here. But it really the extension is on the large side, and the policy, as other members have said, is quite clear about how the extension should relate to the host building. Now, quite obviously, an earlier version of this would have had all one building right to the back wall, and clearly that's not acceptable. I think my inclination would be to agree with officers that maybe further discussions are required so that a better compromise can be reached with the applicant. I mean, having that gap there is all very well, but clearly the applicant's professional opinion is that it is not good. I was going to say planning, but perhaps design. Thank you. So yeah. I have to say there's an element to be damned if we don't, we're damned if we don't.
Yes.
We have tried and better tried to accommodate what the applicant is required, and in doing so, we haven't got to adhere. I think Councillor Turner said it's about to adhere to the policy, and in particular the new policy. It's instead of black and white, the cumulative effect is immense as far as I'm concerned. And we sort of talked about looking at the back of the previous building and the other application. When you start looking at the back of this one, the first thing that I've said, and I've reiterated it just now, is that we need to look at the planning application for the properties above this, number 7. Because I think that in itself, that's totally out of keeping, and I'm hoping that that has got an application, but it is certainly out of keeping with that area. So, all being said, I don't even think, I apologise for this, I don't even think it's a balanced decision. I think we have tried our damage to help this guy, this applicant, and I think that we've come up with something that is workable. The engineer said this, that it would be quite generous in trying to accommodate, but I think when people push and push and push, there's a time when you've got to say no, and I think we've reached that, but that's my opinion. So we have got more than a second to accept officers' recommendation. This is to refuse this application. All those in favour? Anybody against? Sorry, did you get that?
Just have the goes in for refusal again.
Those in favour?
To refuse the application, so
That's in favour.
in favour of the officer's recommendation to refuse, yes, yeah.
Those against? Abstain? Are they abstaining? to present our figures to demolish our existing storage unit, fixing the replacement storage unit, land at James Street, Ravensthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is land at William Street in Ravensthorpe. The site currently comprises of a detached single-storey building that is used for storage purposes. So the proposal is to demolish the existing storage unit and erect a larger building for storage purposes. The application is brought to committee because of members' previous involvement with the site. So members may recall the previous scheme where access for deliveries was proposed to be taken from George Street. So this access point up here. However, members raised serious concerns with this access and the lack of on-site parking and internal turning, and the application was refused for the reasons which are set out at paragraph 10.23 on page 59 of your agenda. So this is the existing structure on site. So the proposal is now being amended by the applicant, and the access for all deliveries is now proposed to be taken from William Street. So the access point is just to the right of this photo. As members may be aware, William Street does also include a turning head at the end, as shown here. So a full report is set out before you. This sets out that the principle of development is acceptable, as is the overall appearance of the building, since neither of these considerations form reasons for the previous reason for refusal, which was based on highway safety grounds. The revised proposal, which has changed the point of access and allows for appropriate delivery to the site with on-site parking, has been carefully assessed by officers and is considered to be satisfactory. There was some concern by officers regarding the impact on residential amenity. However, following consultation with environmental services and following receipt of additional information by the applicant regarding how the premises would operate, as set out at paragraph 10.15 of the officer report, it is considered by officers that, with the inclusion of appropriate conditions, as set out on page 62, that the proposals would accord with relevant local and national planning policy. Recommendation is therefore to delegate approval back to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hussain, please.
Yeah, it's, previously this application
Mr.
was
Hussain, could you do the test?
previously this application was turned down by the member of the council was in favour of the approval because of the highway safety matters. Redesign the access from the William Street, and there is no issue left to change footprint of the building. So I left the footprint as it is recommended as approval in previously, and the highways have no concern with this time as Julia said, and the environmental department is that there's no concern, and I think everybody is happy now, and it should be recommended as approval. I don't want to repeat the same.
No, that's fine.
So thank you very much.
Oh, that's the same. Mr. Raja, do you want to speak?
No, it's me, Raj.
Mr. Hussain?
Yes, well, I'm not supposed to, my architect has been telling me not to in the past week, but the only thing I wanted to say was in terms of one of the previous applications that's been approved is one of the councillors raised, well, one of the price was that there was a consultation with the neighbours, whereas we have done consultation with the neighbours, they're all happy with it. So from the neighbours there's no problem, and highways don't have an issue. So hopefully there's an issue.
Members?
I'll move this as a officer's recommendation.
Any other comments?
See what they did.
Anybody going to second that?
I'll second that.
Councillor Bell? Nothing more to say. I think. Everything's been said. We'll go in a second to accept that as a recommendation. On this application, all those in favour? Anybody against? That's approved. Thank you. Thanks for the meeting. Stay out less.